Hi everybody, so this is a video that will show you how to create a sort of slider puzzle like this. If we look over here at the drawing, this is the what we call exploded assembly where it has been taken apart. These dashed lines show how the pieces could slide out and in. If I actually look at my regular assembly here, I can actually slide these pieces. This is a feature that Onshape has. It's pretty neat. But it's kind of advanced, so usually I don't have students do it. The pieces do come apart. I just have them rigged up so that they are stuck together. So that is how that appears. But anyways, what I'm going to be kind of living in is this drawing right here. And I am going to be flipping back and forth between this for some of the details and this blank document that I have over here. This might be a long one, but I'll of course include some chapter points so you can skip around if you need to. I'm going to create the base first. Then I'm going to create these tracks that are in it, and then I'm going to use the tracks like we see here. I'm going to create the track here on the outside, and then I'm going to use the offset tool to create the inside shape and the geometry for the sliders. And then last, I will add the top parts to them. So you're going to see all those pieces here. So hopefully it goes well. Let's give it a shot. So to start out, we're going to need, I'm going to actually flip this over to another window. To start out, we are going to need let's see down here. Actually, I'm going to bring that back. So to start out, we're going to need to create this base. Okay, so forgive me there for my stutter for a moment. So we're just going to create the base first. I hope I have all my dimensions on here. We'll find out. So this is 60 by 60 and then 10 millimeters tall. I'm working entirely in millimeters here. So I'm going to make my sketch on the top plane. And I'm going to assume that you already know some of the basics like making sketches and whatnot. I'm going to make a rectangle starting at the origin here, any size that I want. I'll come back and dimension it later. So I'm going to click to place some dimensions. So we'll make that 60 millimeters. If you are working in centimeters, you pretty much just move the decimal place to the left. So this would really be 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters. Then I'll exit my sketch, hit extrude, and click on that shape that I just made. And this would be 2.5 centimeters or 25 millimeters. I'm just going to go 10 millimeters, which is really 1 centimeter. If you want, you could actually type 1 cm in here and it would work. So whatever units you're working in, you can actually do that with inches too. So, all right, great. We've created our base. Okay, so our base is here. We've got this base part, but we need those tracks in it. So that's sort of the next step here. So to get that far, I'm going to start taking a look at this view right here, which is sort of our front view of the object. We have a front view, a top view, and what's called a detail view, which comes from this down here, this A, and it's like a blown up version that shows everything nice and close up so we can see things in better detail and see the dimensions better. So I'm going to create those tracks. Well, this is easy. I can just make a sketch. I'm going to make it right on this face here. Okay, I'm going to click on this front part of the cube so I can look at it. And you know what? I'm going to hit P on the keyboard, and that's going to turn off all the other planes so that they're not in my way. I don't have that blue stuff going on. And I just turned on my mouse pointer highlighter, so you should be able to see that better. So the next step here is to just create one of these shapes. Now, I'm not going to worry about where it is just yet, but I am going to make sure that my lines snap to the horizontal or the vertical. See how it's snapping with the yellow dots? And the horizontal. So that was vertical, horizontal. And then I'm going to go like this. I'm going to bring this over. When I come back up, I'm going to actually hover for a second over this dot. And I'm going to bring this over so that those 2 points are aligned. And Onshape will actually remember that later. And it's going to keep those two together. So I will hit escape now to cancel out my lines so that I can finish some things. Now let's take a look over here for a second. What I'm seeing is a center line here between this. So that means that everything on either side of this is symmetrical. That's what this is communicating to us. So I don't necessarily have, I do have, it looks like 7 millimeters for the opening. So I'll keep that in mind. But like from this drawing, I can't tell how long this line is right here, but that's okay because I know that this is symmetrical. So I know that it must just be centered around that. And something else I'm actually not seeing here for my drawing that I should have added is the width from here to here. So I'm going to throw that on here. This part is less important for you guys to see because this is the drawing software. the drawing part of this, but I'm still going to put a dimension in here so we can see how far it is from there to there. So anyways, so with that all in mind, I said that everything is centered here. So the first thing I'm going to actually do is I'm going to go to my constraints up here, and I'm going to pick the equal constraints. If you can't find that, you can just type equal in the search box up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this line and this line equal to each other. And watch, when I click on the second line, they're going to jump to be the same length. And now if I hit escape to cancel the equal tool, no matter where I move these, it's actually going to maintain the equality of those two lines. So that's like a super useful feature for creating, a shape like this, because it can really preserve symmetry around an object in different situations. So now I can use all the other dimensions I have here. So let's see. This was 7 from here to here for the smaller part, and the bigger part we just found out was 12. So I'm going to hit the dimension tool. We said 7 for this. Let's go 7. And from here to here is 12. Well, I was pretty close on that one. Now we got to get the vertical distances. So from the top surface down to the first little ledge, it's 4 millimeters, and then another 4 millimeters down for that based on this dimension over here. So you may choose to change some of these dimensions if you want. It's really up to you in the end. These are ones that I have decided would work well. And this makes sense because that leaves us about 2 millimeters on the bottom, which is enough material that'll hopefully keep the whole thing from snapping in half. So I'm actually printing it right now, so we'll find out. So this is great that we've done this much, but now what we need to do is we also need to actually create a second one over here, and then we'll worry about positioning all these. So I'm going to start with that general shape, but just like before, I'm going to hover and then move my mouse away to get that dotted line so that this point matches up with that point that's over there. So we'll go like this, this. We'll get that to, look at that, it's already snapping to it. We'll come back in and go up here. Okay. Now, here's a nifty thing is we can use that equal tool. Again, we can say this is equal to this. So those will stay the same size. And we can say this is equal to this. So I'm clicking on each one of those. We can even say that this is equal to this. So what we can do is we can make it, so watch this, if I were to change this number now, what if I made it 13? It's going to make the one on the right bigger also. Boom, they got bigger together. So we're going to, of course, change that back to 12, but I just wanted to show that as an example. So that's using our equal tool. We can't set the distance unless there's a line, so I am still going to dimension from here to here. We're going to call that, oh, look at that, it's already 7, so we'll just leave that the same. So cool. So now kind of the last step here, of course, is making sure these are kind of evenly distributed across here. So what we see is, look at that, from here to here, so from the outside to the center of that, it should be 18.5 inches. So that's really easy to put in here. If we can go, let's see here, we'll go from here. Now, here's the thing is we can't really dimension to the middle of a line. So what we can do though, is we can add a line just like this. We can hover until the middle, see that middle point lights up, bring a line straight up, click it down, pick that line. So I hit escape to cancel my line tool and I selected it and I'm gonna click construction. So I'm gonna do that for this side also. I'm gonna add and since it's already picked, it's automatically a dashed line. And then I'm going to hit escape to cancel my line tool, and it automatically turns off. Now I should be able to see if I drag these, the whole shape moves. So that stands to reason if I set a dimension from here to here, and I make that 18.5 like my drawing, and I do that on this side, that's going to give us 18.5, that distance as well. So that's all kind of locked into place now. I'm looking at this. Oh, I'm seeing that this line was never perfectly lined up with this one over here. I can fix that by picking this line and this line, and then going back to my constraints and saying coincident. And what this will do is it'll make it so those two lines are locked together, which really should have happened when I was drawing them. But if it didn't, you may need to do that now. So that creates our two symmetrical track profiles, but now we have to extrude them. So I'm going to click the extrude tool here, and I'm going to select remove this time because I want to remove material. I'm going to hover around until the outline lights up, And now this isn't going all the way through the object, but we can fix that by changing the end type, which is normally set at blind. We can change it to through all, and that's going to take it all the way through to the other side. I click the check mark. Now I have those tracks on there. So that sets that up really well for us to keep going with these steps. Okay, so what's next? Well, let's take a look. If we look here, we need to create these shapes that go in here. So the strategy we're going to use is we're not actually going to make all four at once. We're going to make a double long one and another double long one, like 2 bars sort of, and then we're going to chop them in half. So I'll show you how to do that at the end. So first though, let's just focus on making the general shape. So we're going to use some more sneaky sketching strategies here. I am going to click, let me tilt this again. I'm going to click to make a sketch. I'm going to place it right on this surface right here that's outlining in orange. Okay. Now I'm going to switch to my front view. There we go. So I can see a little better. And our best friend right now is going to be the offset tool. So if we look back here for a second, we see right here it says 0.5 TYP, and it's showing the gap that's in there. So what that means is typically, TYP, the typical distance here is 0.5 millimeters. So that's going to be the distance from here to here. It's going to be the distance from here to here. It's going to be the distance everywhere that it looks like that. So that's really convenient because that's going to allow us to type that number into our offset, and it will create the same shape but offset by 0.5 millimeters. So I'm going to click offset. Again, if you can't find it, search for it in the tools. And I'm actually going to pick basically all the lines that are pointing upwards on the top of this object. I'm going to start over here. I'm going to go like this. And just go slow and make sure you get each line. If you mess it up and it gives you an error, ignore this error for now. Wait till we get to the end. So I'm going to go through. I'm going to pick all these. And you're going to say, well, Mr. Osgood, that does not look like a shape that I want. Well, we can drag this arrow. Let's bring it so it's going towards the inside. You don't want to bring it too far, and you don't have to get the number just right, but get it so it's about the general shape. And then you can click off of that, click somewhere else, and it's going to say, hey, what was that distance you wanted again? And this is where we type 0.5. And so what that's doing is you can see here, that's creating this shape. But we do have some extra lines, like our line is sticking way off to the side. So we have to create the shapes that show up on top of that. So this line is all lined up. Let's add a big vertical line, or a horizontal line rather, right up here. Okay, we're just going to make it nice and long. We're going to trim. You'll see what we use for the trim tool later, so I'm going to hit escape. So that line is just going to kind of live up there. And we're going to trim this away to get all the shapes to be the way that we want. Okay. Another thing we're going to do is, remember that construction line we made before? I'm going to make one of those, and I'm going to use the midpoint of this line right here. So actually, I'm going to click construction first. You could click it before, or you can select the line after and switch it to construction. And I'm going to draw a vertical line right up from the center. So that's actually going to act like our little spot that we can split this on, and you'll see how in a minute. And then what I'm just going to do is I'm going to just close off the rest of this with some vertical lines. So I'm going to hit escape and pick my line tool again to start a new line on that side. Otherwise, it'll stay stuck to that. Uh-oh, I went a little too far. So that's okay. We're going to leave that because now we're going to use this trim tool to trim things up. And we'll come back and do that again. We'll do this a couple times. So I'm going to click the scissors for trim. And what this lets me do is it lets me pick lines. And if it's like dangly or sticking off, it's going to trim it away from where we originally had the line. So I'm going to go and it's sort of like it's cleaning it up. So I've cleaned that up nice. I'm going to leave this middle line for now. I'm going to turn off my trim tool. And now I'm going to actually offset this line to the left and the right. And I have a distance here for that, right? This gap should be 1 millimeter total. So that line looks like it's in the middle. So if it's 1 millimeter from here to here, and that's the vertical line we drew, then it's a 0.5 millimeter from the vertical line out to the outside. So why don't we do this? Let's use offset. And we're going to pick that line, and we're going to, it's going in the right direction. So we can just click off of it and say 0.5. So 0.5 millimeter to the right. And then I'm going to click that again, and this time I'm going to drag the arrow off to this side, click somewhere off of it, and type 0.5 to the left. And then can you guess what we're going to use now? We're going to use that trusty trim tool to clean this up again. So I'm going to hit trim. I'm going to click on the extra pieces of the lines that I don't want anymore. So I don't want those little nubs. I don't want those. And I can even get in here and get rid of these little nubs. I'm going to leave that dotted line just to be safe, just because we were dimensioning between it. So if I delete it, it may lose the dimensions. Okay. So, okay, things are looking great. We're looking more and more like the objects that we want. The only thing that we haven't set is we haven't set the total width of these, and we haven't set the overall height of this. I'm going to turn off my trim tool. And that's why these lines are blue. We can still move them, and that's no good. We want those to all be nice and even. So I'm going to actually take advantage again of the equal constraint, because I know that this size has to be equal to that size. So I just click those two, so they're locked together now. So if I hit escape and I drag one of these, you'll see those change together. And we also, let's see, we need to know how far up this line is so that we can't move it like this anymore. And we see right here, 7 millimeters from the bottom to the top. I'm going to just slide right in, dimension that, bottom to the top. We're going to say 7, enter, 7 millimeters. And then I also need to know how far it is to the outside. Oop, and look at this, 22 millimeters from this line to this line. So because we set those as equal, if I just dimension one side, 22, watch, the other side's going to change also. Boom, nice and even. All the lines are black now. We have this one blue dot, but that's okay. That was a construction line. I'm going to click check mark to accept my sketch. And now I can extrude these two, and I can create the two sort of shapes that will then slice in half. So ready? I'm just going to hit extrude, and I'm going to leave this on new because I'm really creating a new part. I'm going to create a new part here and here, okay? And I'm going to flip the direction on that. And if we look over here at our dimensions, we see the first piece from the front to the back is 25 millimeters. The second piece from the front to the back is 25 millimeters. Add that up, what do we get? 50 millimeters. So I'm going to type 50 in here for the length that this is going to go. And it's not perfectly centered, but we don't actually need it to be. I just did that for the drawing because it looked nicer. If you go to print this, it's going to be okay. So the second to the last step before we add the design is to chop these two in half. So this is actually going to be a technique really similar to how we created these two edges right here, except we're going to do it on the top of these objects now. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a sketch on top of this object. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the amount that we're going to like slice out of the middle of these two in order to allow them to be separate pieces so that we end up with 4 pieces in the end. So you're going to see what I mean in a second. So I'm going to go to my top view now, and I'm going to draw a line. And I'm going to have that line snap right to the midpoint of this right here and go all the way to the midpoint of the other side. Okay. And why don't we click on that line? Let's make that a construction line also. So that makes it dashed, and then I'll click off it over here in space somewhere. And then we are going to use offset just like we did before. And we're going to offset down. And you know what? Let's leave it at 5 millimeters. I think that's going to be a good distance. So I'll hit enter. Let's go up in the opposite direction. So if I click that arrow, it flips it to the other side. 5 millimeters that way as well. Enter, enter. And let's close off the sides of this because we didn't do that either. So I'm going to go like that. And I'm going to go like that. So I've closed off all those shapes. And you might have noticed the center of this changed color. It got a little lighter. So watch, when I click check mark and I go to extrude, now I should be able to pick this and this. And I can say remove, and it's going to slice down and through. Now, what we don't want is we don't want it slicing through everything. So we're going to, for our merge scope, where right now it says no merge scope selected, I'm going to pick just this part and just this part. And then it's only going to cut those two. If you notice when I was clicking on that, when I clicked the first one, it started slicing through that. When I click the second one, it starts slicing through that. If I also pick the base, look, it's going to chop through everything. And it's going to put a big hole in it. That's not what we want, right? So I'm going to unselect the base. So you should just pick these two pieces, these two parts, and then click the check mark. And it's going to just selectively chop all of those pieces away so that we are left with these 4 pieces that we have been looking for here. The last thing we need to do is to just add the shapes that's going to be on top of this sort of pattern. to create the indent there so that there's a way for the user to actually match this thing up. So I'm going to hit sketch, and I'm going to just sketch on the top of one of these objects. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to carefully place a rectangle. I guess I didn't get it. There we go. Carefully place a rectangle with its corner in the center of this object and the center in this object on that part. So I'm going to hit corner rectangle. I'm going to hover until I sort of grab the midpoint of that side. And then look at that. It already kind of knew I wanted the midpoint of that side. So I'm going to click for the first corner. And then I'm going to do the same thing down here. Midpoint, midpoint. And then when they both light up, I'll click again. So this creates that shape. All right. And then we can use our trusty offset tool to offset this square. And I'm going to pick all the sides. And why don't we just offset it instead of 5? I'm going to click over here to start the dimension there. Let's do 3 in, and then I'll click all the sides again. We're going to do 3 in the outward direction. So we'll click somewhere else and we'll do 3. So the total distance across that is 6. Now you have this extra line in the middle, but we're actually not going to worry about it for now. You're going to see we click the check mark and we go to extrude. That's going to let us pick all of the outlines there. Oop, and we missed one. It may behave a little oddly because of where we place the sketch, but you want to make sure all those are picked. And of course, we don't want to create this big chunk on top of this. We want to remove material. So I click remove, and this merge scope pops up again. This is just like before. This is saying, hey, what do you want to cut? Well, we only want to cut these 4 parts. And we don't want to cut all the way through. All right, let's see. How deep do we want to go? Do we even see that here? I didn't put it on here. Well, let's do a little math. If this is 7 millimeters tall, why don't we just go down 2 or 3 millimeters? Let's go down 3 millimeters so that we're not chopping everything in half. And you can see the preview. That's the shape it's going to create there. When I click the check mark, bam, we have all of our parts created now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we left enough room that everything should slide past one another. So really, it's pretty straightforward. It's just like a lot of geometry that's in there and making sure things line up to one another. But as long as you get it in your head how the stuff lines up, then you should be pretty golden for making something like this. So this is, again, how to make the puzzle toy. So I hope this helps, and I hope this made some sense. Feel free to slow the video down, speed it up as you